Hi, friends. I'm Olivia. This is AV Club, where I talk about horror, lit fiction, weird books, whatever I want to talk about. And today I'm back with another installment of recent horror book releases that I'd like to review. This one is an excellent installment because it has demons, both literal and metaphorical. It has spirits, it has cannibalism, it has mimics, it has it all, really. So please join me. Welcome if you're new, subscribe if you haven't, and let's get into it. I'll put bookmarks down below for each book. If you're interested in really more of a specific book, just go ahead and skip to it. I don't mind. First up is Fiend by Alma, which is apparently her first book that she has written that is set in current day times. It's also the first book by her that I have read. This book follows a very powerful family, the Barisha family, who it seems like everything just works out really well for, that their enemies, their opponents in business, earthquakes take over their factories, and business deals fall through for anyone who sets out against them. The patriarch for this family, Zeph, is very powerful and very strict, and he has three children: an oldest son, Darden, and then Maris, who we mostly follow, and Nora, the youngest child. They're all having issues being able to follow the rules of this family and feeling the constraints about being with who they want to be with, about wanting to impress their father, but also, follow their own path in life. Maris also feels slighted because she wants to take over, but feels like she never could because she is a woman and her brother is the obvious heir to the family. So, where does the horror come in? Because this really just feels like Succession. Well, maybe there are otherworldly powers that are keeping this family, the Barisha family, so in power and are what's making it hard for any opponents to come up against them. And that's pretty obvious from the beginning. Like, that is the gist of this book. So, really, it mostly does follow the business dealings of this family, and it follows kind of the typical plot beats that you might think about how each of these children, the eldest male, the girl who feels like that she can't succeed in her father's eyes, and then of course the youngest child having their own issues. It follows kind of those typical plot beats, and yes, there are demons in store, but I think that if you are exclusively a horror reader, it doesn't really get to very horrific levels. It's not spooky throughout, it doesn't have a lot of ambiance. It really is mostly about this business, about this company. It was totally fine. Like, it was very well written on a sentence by sentence level, but it just didn't really do anything extraordinary for me. And I do think that it would probably disappoint a lot of other people too, who think that there are going to be more interesting demonic things going on. But there's not anything much more interesting than the power that rich people already have. So I don't know. This one might be a pass for you. I didn't mind it. It was fine, but it might be a pass for you. The next book is Killer on the Road by Stephen Graham Jones, which I believe is republished, but my library just got it. And it also was not the combination book where it had The Babysitter Lives, I think is what it's called, on it too, because the audiobook was just Killer on the Road. So that's all I'm reviewing here. And I loved this one. I am already a Stephen Graham Jones stan. Maybe it didn't live up quite to the Buffalo Hunter for me, or Night of the Mannequins I love, which I know isn't everyone's favorite, but I love. But this one was so good. It follows 16-year-old Harper, who is running away from home, has a very unhappy home life, feels like she has no future there. And whenever she is running away from home again, she runs into friends. And turns out there's like this other maniac serial killer on the road, who has a very interesting killing style. If you know Stephen Graham Jones, he's always going to take it to somewhere weird. So if it wasn't already scary enough for it to be teenagers running from a serial killer on the road, trying to hitchhike and get into truckers, cabs, and just make it out of the city. If that wasn't enough, there is something a little extra special going on. And they hint at it from the very introductory paragraphs about maybe there's some cannibalism going on here. Maybe he is eating these people that he is killing too. And the serial killer was active in the past, so why is he active again now? This one is so fun. I highly recommend it if you like a very action heavy horror story, but also like that Stephen Graham Jones weird twist to anything. That there is a very spooky level on top of like straightforward gore. There's some really interesting dynamics between Harper and her two best friends. Her ex-boyfriend is along for the ride, her little sister is along for the ride, as well as her mother trying to find her after she's run away from home. She's thinking a lot about her dad, who is a trucker, who she hasn't seen in many, many years, but is always hoping will come back for her. So there is also the Stephen Graham Jones level of really interesting family dynamics and themes to be explored there. Highly recommend this one. The next book is Herculine by Grace Byron, which is pitched as Manhunt meets Lord of the Flies. I think they're including Manhunt just because it's a story about trans women and by a trans woman. However, very, very different. And I actually liked this more than Manhunt. Lord of the Flies, too, not really what's going on here. In Herculine, we follow a narrator who is hoping to escape from her demons, both mental and maybe literal, some sleep paralysis demons. Um, Always feels like there's someone watching her. She's trying to escape that in New York City, and she is called by her ex to an all trans woman commune in Indiana, in rural Indiana. And things are very interesting there. Very quickly, it feels like all of these women are part of like almost more like a hive mind more than like a Lord of the Flies situation. There are weird rituals going on, very spooky feeling, maybe some sacrifices, and more demonic energy than we got in Fiend, honestly. The narrator is frequently thinking back about and exploring again in her mind some themes that you see in a lot of trans narratives about conversion therapy, about passing, about comparing herself to other trans women. Our narrator is frequently comparing women in this story, and everyone is like kind of pitted against each other. She's very judgmental about other trans women and is just feeling very insecure. The demons in this are maybe a little bit too literal for my liking. The one thing about how this book was written that stuck out to me, maybe not for the best, was that it almost had like things that you might find on the next Taylor Swift album, things that are just a little bit too out of date to just like reference wholesale. Things like, would you still love me if I was a worm? Like, I don't know. This one again was fine, but not something that I even know who I would recommend this to. Don't think that everyone would love it, but don't think that everyone would hate it. I think this would be a middle of the road book for a lot of people. So if it sounds interesting to you, this spooky cultish commune in Indiana, maybe check it out. Shiny Happy People by McLeod Chapman is an upcoming YA horror coming out on November 11th. I was able to get an arc of this through NetGalley, so thank you to them and the publisher for providing that for me. I am not a YA horror reader, but I am a devout McLeod Chapman stan, and honestly, this didn't let me down. It definitely was appropriately labeled YA. It does follow a teenage girl in high school dealing with some high schoolish issues, but also some other very different issues. She's adopted. It's a lot about her relationship both to her bio mom and her adoptive family. I can't say for sure how well that part of it was really handled, but it seems like something, the way that was written, it might be sensitive if you are adopted, just because there's like negative feelings both ways. It's a very daring topic to write about. But the gist of the story is that this high school girl is like not the most popular. She's kind of like on the outsider group of friends, and her brother is like an insider. And there's this new drug that's going around school that is making everyone very happy, and her friends leave her because they're like part of this like new group that's all taking this drug and they're so happy. So it's both about big pharma and the drug and toxic positivity and how these people are presenting as if they're happy all the time, but like that's not realistic. But it's also about like this very real horror of like what the drug is doing. It's like this plant like drug, and the way that this is really going around is it becomes very popular to take the drug and go on Snapchat and record your experience. It's like the seizure like experience, and it looks horrific to watch, but then people come out of it and they're like so ready to do it again. It really reminded me of the talk to me scenes like that, and that performing and looked atness of social media being like a very real horror, as well as like this book had some of the gnarliest body horror that I've ever read. Like it is so surprising that it is in this YA horror. So if you love body horror, check this one out. Also, the one of the craziest scenes I've ever read in a book is set in this pep rally, and how these like cheerleaders are performing the pep rally. You just have to read it to get it. And I mean, he is a master writer of horror, honestly. The other YA thing, other than it just being set in a high school, is I feel like the themes were a little bit more pronounced, whereas I feel like his adult books, there's a little bit more ambiguity in what you're supposed to be getting from it, but it wasn't childish. The themes that were told in this, it was just themes that related more to being a teenager, whether it's feeling disempowered being a child, and then again, being an adopted child, and also like high school social groups. So it made sense that it was YA, but yeah, I will continue to read everything that he ever writes because this was so good too. So check it out. I highly recommend this one, even if you are also not someone who usually reads YA like me. And the last one is a book that people are not loving, not liking even a lot of the times, has a pretty low average rating already, and that is The Unveiling by Quan. And y'all are being way too harsh on this book. I don't think you're getting it. This book follows Stryker, who is a film location scout and a black woman, and she is the only black woman on this expedition in Antarctica, which is a very unique setting for a horror story, I think. The other people on this cruise include like a child who's obsessed with Lovecraft and is telling the story of At the Mountains of Madness like it's real. There is a gender non-conforming, non-binary teenager who is very curious and very smart and intelligent, and rich people of various levels of corruptness. I do understand why people don't love this one. It is not straightforward at all. You don't necessarily know what is really going on. Stryker is having a hard time on this cruise. She's getting these like seizure like episodes where she's blacking out. I listened to this on audiobook, which I loved. Apparently, it looks like just redacted white text in the print book, but there's like garbled audio whenever it goes between what's happening currently on the cruise and her revisiting times in her life where she also felt weird for being the only black person in a white place, in a rich place, and just feeling out of sorts. I feel like the negative reviews that I'm reading are talking about how they want it to be a weird horror book in Antarctica and being about Antarctica and more about the expedition, I guess, more straightforward of a novel. But no, it's not. It is massively about racism. It's about the fragmentation of her ego, about like the psychosis put upon by having to act a certain way around this group of white people, and how that has been her whole life since she was a child, and having just difficulty being in this like very weird isolated environment. The thing that I would most closely relate it with is almost like the psychosis of The Shining, and about his issues being in that isolated environment there. The same thing kind of goes for Stryker here, where there are large passages where she doesn't know if what she's seeing is real or not. She's having hallucinations of a long ago expedition in Antarctica. It's very weird. It's very literary. It definitely isn't the most like fast paced book. If you want that, if you really want a plot heavy book, then no, maybe it's not the one for you. But if you would like something that is weird, cerebral, smart, if you like the idea of something like The Shining. But mostly what I wanted to say is like, this is not as bad as everyone is saying it is. And the people that are saying it's bad are just like not engaging with the themes of it in their review and talking about how weird and upsetting the writing is. That maybe that's the point. And that's okay if you don't like it. You can say, I think it did this and I didn't like that, or I didn't think it did it well, but like, engage with the themes, please. It's really hard to say too much more about like what actually goes on because I still don't really know all of what was real or was not real in the story, who died or who didn't die, how they died. The ending, ambiguous. That'll piss off a lot of people, but yeah, I think that it all fit to serve the themes. And if you think about it with that in mind, almost like the bluest eye, maybe like The Shining meets the bluest eye, like it was very unique. I mean, I've never read a book like it, and you have to appreciate that. But thank you so much for joining me for another set of recent horror releases or upcoming horror releases. And I've been like kind of on top of reading horror books as they come out. Depends on how fast my library holds get to me. But I'm still very much in a horror mood. So I'm sure that I will get to more and hopefully have another installment soon. But until then, I'll talk to you later. Bye.